Hello and welcome to this Lesson Lab module titled Classroom Procedures and Routines that was designed and produced by GoTeach11. Your journey starts here. In this course, you'll learn about the role of procedures and how they create structure, predictability, and increase your overall effectiveness. You'll specifically implement the procedures threshold and strong start, and you may decide to reinforce the slant or start procedure during your mini lesson. This proficiency rubric details how you'll demonstrate your learning for this module. To earn credit for this course, you must greet students at the door and direct them to begin working on a do now when they come in. Sometime throughout the course of the mini lesson, you'll use a visual aid to either rehearse or reinforce a procedure. For today's presentation, you'll need copies of Teach Like a Champion 2.0 by Doug Lemov and The First Days of School by Harry and Rosemary Wong. Now that we know our objective, what materials we'll need, and how our learning will be assessed, we're ready to get started. Why even talk about classroom procedures? Doesn't this take away from teaching the content? Well, procedures are actually kind of important. They help define your expectations and improve overall efficiency. The more time you spend establishing procedures early on in the year, the less time you'll have to spend correcting when things get wheels off. The procedures you set up allow opportunities for students to take responsibility for their actions. They also inform students how the class is managed, which becomes especially important when students are placed in your class later on in the year. Think to yourself, what do I want students to be able to routinely do without me having to directly teach them over and over again? Well, the routines you want to occur are defined by procedures which explicitly need to be taught. Clear procedures lead to healthy routines. Scan over the pages 138 to 147 in The First Days of School to fill in any gaps for why procedures are important. As you scan, consider the effect that procedures have on classroom culture. One point from the reading that I found interesting was the difference between rules and procedures. Rules guide student behavior, but procedures say how things should be done. Considering the relationship between procedures and a classroom culture, we can infer that procedures help establish a strong classroom culture by defining that we do things a certain way in this room. Clear procedures help send a message that I've thought about this, and if we do it this way, we'll be in the best possible position to learn and even have fun while doing it. There are two techniques, threshold and strong start, that you'll need to implement in your mini lesson during the second lesson lab. Read about these techniques in Teach Like a Champion 2.0 on pages 353 to 358. As you read, think about how you will welcome students to class and get them started on a do now as they enter. So, the threshold technique is greeting each student at the door, which is going to allow an opportunity for you to reestablish expectations and set the tone for the rest of the class. You'll know when this becomes routine when your students line up and wait outside the door every day to be greeted. The strong start technique is the expectation that as students enter the door, they immediately gather the resources necessary and begin working on a do now. You'd be surprised how much time's wasted taking attendance, gathering resources, but the combination of strong start and threshold minimizes lost instructional time. See these two techniques in action. Using your video library that comes with the purchase of Teach Like a Champion 2.0, check out clip 47 and see Mr. Chiger greet his students and start class strong. You could definitely see that threshold and strong start are a routine in Mr. Chiger's class, as his students came in and did exactly what they needed to get started on the opening assignment. As you greet students at the door, you'll want to direct students to begin on a do now that you've already prepared. Don't feel bound to that term do now. This slide contains other names we could give the opening assignment, such as the Sizzler or the Get Going activity. Call it what you want, just be consistent about it. The First Days of School has a great guide for the process of teaching classroom procedures. It's guaranteed that students are going to need your guidance for a procedure to become routine. Read about these steps of teaching classroom procedures on pages 148 to 150 of the First Days of School. During your mini lesson, we'll assume that you've already taught or introduced a procedure at an earlier time, so as you read, consider whether you'll rehearse or reinforce a specific procedure. One procedure that we recommend is a slant or star procedure, which is detailed in Teach Like a Champion 2.0 on pages 360 to 361. This procedure helps students know how to actively listen to the speaker and has strong classroom management ties. Read about the slant or star procedure and consider whether you'd like to reinforce this during your mini lesson. Whatever procedure you reinforce, it's helpful to have a visual of the procedure that remains in one location in the room. Whenever you decide on that procedure, be sure to create a visual that you can point to or have students refer to. Video clip 59 in your Teach Like a Champion 2.0 video library shows a teacher reinforcing a technique. Watch this video, which may provide guidance for how you can apply this to your own mini lesson. Not sold on slant or star? That's okay. There are tons of other procedures out there. One of the best parts of being a teacher is that the class is your domain and the procedures you establish become the law of the land. Scan chapters 15 and 16 of the First Days of School to learn about other potential procedures. There are even ideas for how to rehearse or reinforce some of them. Note that some procedures can even be content specific, such as using a particular summarization strategy or detailing a process for solving a math problem. Congratulations, you've done it! You've learned about the importance of establishing procedures, how to roll them out, and how to reinforce them throughout the year. Let's recap how you'll demonstrate your learning for this module. We'll all line up in the hallway before the mini lesson begins, and once the timer starts, you'll be able to greet students at the doorway. For that extra challenge, individualize your greetings. There's lots of creative ways to greet your students. Feel free to search some popular websites for ideas. When you greet students, instruct them to begin on your do now. The do now should allow for a follow-up discussion. If there's not much reason to follow up with a conversation, or there's really only one right response to your do now, create a different task that will benefit from follow-up conversation. Sometime during the mini lesson, reinforce a procedure with your students. For that extra challenge, check with the student after you've reviewed the procedure and ask them why the procedure even matters. Here are some tips for your 10-minute mini lesson. The time will begin once you begin greeting students at the doorway. You'll likely only have 3 to 5 students to greet, so it should only take a minute or two to greet your students. After you greet the first or second student, direct them to begin on the do now. You may want to wait to create your do now until you complete the student collaboration paired discussion module, as you'll want your do now to be aligned with the collaborative task that follows. In the next module, you'll learn about providing effective directions. As you're greeting students and directing them to begin on the do now, there will be an opportunity to provide a concrete, observable direction, such as grab your do now from the desk, get a pencil to write with, and begin working on the do now. Once you select a procedure to rehearse or reinforce, create a visual that details the procedure. Your visual can be on a piece of construction paper, or it could be on a slide that you include with the other slides you have if you choose to do so during the lesson lab. With the visual in sight, rehearse or reinforce a procedure with the intention that you're still trying to turn the procedure into an automatic routine. Thanks for watching this module titled Classroom Procedures and Routines. Classroom procedures are building blocks for becoming an effective teacher. The clearer you can make your intentions, the more your students will know how things need to be done. Turning a procedure into a routine is certainly a process, but your thought and attention with the content of this course will help establish a healthy and productive classroom culture. Today's video referenced material from Teach Like a Champion 2.0 by Doug Lemov and The First Days of School by Harry and Rosemary Wong. Images for this presentation were downloaded from Pixabay, Unsplash, and 123RF.